All right, what is up? What is up, everybody? It is baseball season. Opening day is just a few days away. It is Spin Doc here with a whole bunch of content for you this morning about the MLB season, about betting baseball, and about the thing that I love, the best thing in the world to bet on. No one will talk me off that. That is strikeout props. Strikeout props is actually how I got in this business. For those that don't know, my boy Sosa, who will be joining us during most baseball season, most baseball shows, is actually found me when I was just when I was using my real name, using my government name, and posting a bunch of graphs about spin charts and how they related to strikeouts. And for those that don't know the story, just called me up one morning out of the blue and said, like, how'd you find this out? And I'm like, I'm a data guy. I like math and whatever. And he's like, well, why don't you come on my show and talk about it? And I said, cool. When? He said, about 3 hours, be ready. And from there, we've been running ever since. So also that's how I got my name. That's how Spin Doc came. So it's been the thing that I've been capping the longest. It's the thing that I enjoy the most, and I have a whole bunch of stuff to go over with you to help you out today and get you kind of going on the season for not only strikeout props but betting baseball in general. You'll see the Game of Thrones theme behind me here. That's done on purpose. That's been my theme all spring for the books, is that even though it's summer, even though baseball takes place in the spring and the summer, the phrase winter is coming. Winter is coming for the books when we do strikeouts. Reason why is record speaks for itself. You can see down there, 55.9% overall win percentage, up 152.84 units. Every single one of these is documented, and plus 12.4% ROI. On the public plays that I give out, the winning percentage is about the same, or it's a little bit less, but ROI is a little bit less as well, because VIP does get a number of plus money plays, some extra stuff, and some new stuff this year that I'll talk about in a second. So been actually running some analysis on my own numbers and the areas of the season where we hit the books really, really hard, and we will be going after them this year in a specific time frame. We will be absolutely assaulting them this year. So I can't wait. I'm ready to roll, ready to get into it. So without any further ado, let's go through a few basics about some strikeout props. So number one is, when it comes to capping strikeout props, a couple things that I can tell you about what to look for and what not to look for. So I think that when it comes to strikeout props, it's a market that people can take advantage of, but for some reason look at the wrong things and choose not to. So I want to show you this is a completed chart of what I look for when it comes to strikeout props. And not that I expect anybody to like put this together for just one prop, but a couple things that are in here that I think that you can look at. And then next, I'm going to show you where you can find them, is that you can kind of get yourself going. So number one is that, and I'm going to come back to this one, is that the pitcher's history matters far less than what the situation is today. So you'll see here that this is obviously one from the World Series. And so playoffs are a little bit different, but you'll see that I have Garrett Cole versus the Dodgers, and I have him projected for 3.75 strikeouts, right? Now, under normal circumstances, you go back and you look at history. If you go back and look at trends, you would see that obviously Garrett Cole strikes out way more than 4 guys. He has a much higher strikeout rate. But I use this example because I see this, and if you're a trend better and you're watching this, I'm not trying to hate on you. I'm really not. What I'm doing is trying to educate and trying to get you to a higher plateau, because Capping using only trends can only get you so far in this game. Because if you went by trends for Garrett, you'd say, well, he's hit this in 8 of his last 9 or 15 of his last 16, or, oh my God, he's, 7 of his last 8 on the road, or when the temperature is 56 degrees or higher, or whatever the case might be, right? Trend betting only gets you so far. So a couple things that I like to look at, and again, I don't expect anybody's to be as detailed as this, is number one is whiff percentage, and more specifically, whiff percentage to the pitches that the pitcher throws. So you'll see here that and there's a site, I'm going to show you where to get this, is that you see Garrett Cole primarily leads with a 4-seam fastball. He also throws a curve. He also throws a slider, but he throws the slider to lefties and the curve to righties. So there's a way to easily get metrics to see what the whiff percentage is. And whiff percentage is exactly what it sounds like. It's just the percentage of time that they swing and miss at that pitch. Now, what you also want to look at is what the combined whiff percentage on all 3 pitches are. So mine's color coded here, but you want to look at what that whiff percentage is for all of those. The next thing that I look at is I look at contact rates. Pretty simple, right? Is that if you can't make contact, you're not going to hit a pitch. If you're going to whiff, you're not going to hit a pitch, and that can lead to strikeouts. So you want to look at the contact rate, but there's 2 types of contact rates, as you will see over here. There is zone and chase, and these are all tracked. And again, I'll show you where to find them. Zone and chase contact. So zone contact is exactly what it sounds like. It's the contact rate that you make when you swing in the strike zone. Chase contact is the contact you make when you swing outside of the strike zone. Now, do you have to put it together in this detailed of a format? No, but it helps to have at least an understanding of where these guys are. Next is look at what is their overall swing rate. And you can see I have over here, I don't have numbers, but what I look at is everything has to correlate. And what I mean by correlate is that you have to have a guy who, so for example, if you have a pitcher that operates in the zone, which by the way, league average is about 52.8%. If you have a guy that operates in the zone at 46%, so he's kind of all over the place. Blake Snell would be an example of this. Up until this season, Jesus Luzardo would be another example of this. A guy that can maybe walk some guys. And you have a team that doesn't swing that much in the zone. Well, what can it lead to? It can lead to more walks. It can lead to more pitches. It can lead to a higher pitch count. Because remember, the other thing that I look at constantly is that what is this guy's expected pitch count to be? So there's a couple ways you can do that. Number one is you can go back and look at past history, because past history can indicate future results. The next thing you want to look at is I always go and I look at in general, how many pitches has he thrown his last 3 or 4 starts. Now, what you can do is you can correlate that with the number of projected innings that he's projected to throw. Now, you might say to yourself, but Spin, books don't give out projected innings. No, they don't, but they give out projected outs. And obviously there's 3 outs in an inning. So you divide by 3 and you have your answer. So you have a projected number of innings. And then I look to compare, what I generally look to do is I look to compare, does this make sense? And what I mean by that is this guy spends, let's say 50% of his time or less than 50% of his time in the zone. He's projected to throw about 5 2/3 innings. Okay. But this team takes a lot. This team takes a lot of pitches. So, and they have a lot of guys, as you can see here, who don't chase. So this is a good example because this is the Dodgers. So you see, I have my metric here for under a league average. So Ohtani, Mookie, Freddie, Muncy, they don't chase very much. So if you get a pitcher that operates outside of the zone, what you can do is you can even just do some napkin math and you can say, okay, well, if they're going to take a bunch of pitches, this guy threw 87 pitches in 5 2/3 innings. Do the math, apply that number, and then ask yourself if it makes sense. So if you let's just use a quick example. Let's just use 100 pitches in 5 innings, so 20 pitches an inning. If you have about 20 pitches an inning, and then you're saying, okay, how many do I think he's going to throw today based on the past history? Looks like he's probably going to throw about 80, 85 pitches. These guys take a lot. So if they're going to take a lot, what that means is that there's probably a higher chance of him throwing a lot of balls, throwing his way, and basically pitching his way out of the game. Now, if he's going to do that by the 4th or 5th inning, then I apply the strikeout number and I say, does that make sense, right? Does it make sense that he can get 5 strikeouts in 4 2/3 innings against a team that doesn't really chase that much? That's the first step that I use. Now, there are other mathematical algorithms and formulas that unfortunately, guys, those are proprietary to myself. That's the secret sauce. And I don't share that with anybody, actually. So don't be offended. I don't even share that with like Sosa or Sharpie. So, but this stuff is a general high level view of what you can look at to get a semblance of, does it make sense that that this K prop is set where it is? Because there are many instances where a K prop is set off of an average, off of a weighted average from past history. You can use this to your advantage because, again, if you're doing it off of past history, and most people that do K props and most people on X, and again, I'm not shitting on trend bettors, most people that do it on X operate solely off of trends. And they do this for a few reasons. Number one is because it's easy. It's quick and dirty. The books give you trends. The books will tell you, Garrett Cole has hit this in 8 of his last 9 and 15 of his last 18 when, every batter has at least 7 letters in his name. I mean, I'm being facetious, but you get my point. They will give you this information. They will tell you all of this stuff, right? They will tell you all of this information. And the reason why is because their lines are set to take advantage of that. They're set off of that average. Now, that's the first thing that I learned. And the first thing that I learned to be smarter is when you dig a little bit deeper like this, that's where you can find your advantage. So again, don't chase, don't chase, don't chase, don't chase. Now, the other thing that you have to look at is what point in the season is it? Early in the season, even a team that doesn't chase, if they are finding or if they're facing a guy that they haven't faced before, or they've only faced, like, let's just say less than 15 times, right? The general metric and the general rule of thumb I use that I can actually use past history of pitcher versus batter is if a guy has faced, or is if a team as a total has faced a guy for a relative average of 3 games, and 3 games would be about 90 to 100 plate appearances. So if you don't have that many, right, it's really, I weight it less. I typically will use 30 as my absolute minimum baseline because I see things like, I've seen this on X before, where I've seen like, wow, they have a 36.9% K percentage against this guy. Yeah, because they've only faced him like 18 times, and like half the guys in the lineup haven't faced him at all. So I look for how many guys in the lineup have faced him at least 5 times, and how many total plate appearances. 30 is my minimum. If it's not 30, and meaning AKA basically like 1 full game, is that, or actually closer to 40, because an average MLB game, there's about 37 plate appearances. So 30 to 40 is the general one that I use. If it's not that number, I don't even count it. I don't even use it because, and then especially if it's not a division rival, like I will sometimes go and look and say, okay, Brent Rooker has faced, Garrett Cole 4 times, but he hasn't faced him since 2022. Okay, that doesn't make sense. That that there's no correlation there. How is Brent Rooker going to remember? Yeah, I think he threw me a 3-2 curve last time. He's not going to remember that. This guy's having like 2,000 plate appearances in a season. They're not going to remember that stuff. So past history can be deceiving if you don't know how to apply it. So again, one full game of plate appearances is generally what I use. I like to see 3, and once you get into divisional games, you can definitely get that. And a guy's history against a pitcher, it has to be at least 5 plate appearances, and the majority of them have to be within the last year or 2. If not, it's not really going to correlate, unfortunately. So it's just not going to correlate. So next thing then is umpire. Okay, so I'm going to show you where to get some quick umpire data, but the umpire matters, and people just don't pay attention to this because, like, the umpire decides what is a ball or a strike if the batter doesn't swing. That's especially true when you have a team that doesn't chase and when you have a pitcher that can operate way the hell all the way outside of the zone. Okay. The umpire matters. Now, what do you have to know about the umpire? You don't have to know, like I go deep on it. So like I actually have a whole thing that I built that compares an overlay of the umpires called balls and strikes to batters. Like you don't have to get that detailed. Like for my stuff, for my purposes, I do. But there are places that will tell you in general for free the umpire's tendencies. Does he call a lot of strikes? Does he call it tight inside? What is his accuracy? What is his overall consistency? Because for a pitcher that tries, then you can compare that and you say, okay, this umpire is not really has a low consistency rating. This pitcher tries to clip the corners a lot instead of attacking hitters in the zone. That could potentially lead to some extra balls or some extra strikes. Maybe you're playing with fire. Maybe you don't want to risk it. But again, it's what does just the general tendencies of the umpire. And there are several umpires that are very, very pitcher friendly. Bill Miller is, I've said this over and over again, Bill Miller is like the patron saint of over props, and Alfonso Marquez is the patron saint of under props. So those are the kind of like the 2 extreme examples. There are other ones that you can use that I'll show you where to find it and what to look for, but you just need a general list of tendencies for the umpire. So for example, what I have here is this particular umpire, Mark Ripperger. And this is just because I happen to know this. It's not like anything that I would like expect you guys to know, is that Mark Ripperger, 16.2 Ks. That's about umpire average. Anywhere between 15.5 to 16.5 is about how many Ks per game the umpire calls. Now, again, that's every batter. That's not necessarily the starting pitcher or the starter. So walk percentage 7.9. That's about average too. 7.5 to 8 is about umpire average. So if you want to use those 2 numbers as your baseline, and that's why I use this graph. If you want to use 16 and 8 as your baselines, you can be in pretty good shape. But again, there are sites that will tell you like what percentage strikeouts go up or down when that umpire is in the box. So just real quick, I want to give a shout out to Uncle Stoner. I really love this comment. Try to explain about the NBA. He's never done that or gotten close. And there's a reason for that, buddy. Yes. The other thing that books hammer trend bettors on, hammer them, is that, well, he hasn't hit this in 7 of his last 8 starts. And so now he hasn't hit 5+ Ks in 7 of his last 8 starts. And so now we're going to throw a 5.5 out there and we're going to juice it, right? And we're going to juice it heavy to the under. Okay. Why do you think that they do that? I've said over and over and over and over and over again is that the books are billionaires and we aren't. Okay. Now we can beat them, but they're billionaires and we aren't. And why is that? Do you think that they become billionaires by giving out bets that always lose, or that by giving out can't miss, 50 unit max whales? No. If it doesn't make sense, before you run to the window, stop and think about some of the stuff that I've told you today and figure out and start to ask yourself, why doesn't that make sense? If he hasn't hit it in 8 straight starts, why would they be giving me this line and making me pay -140, -150, minus whatever it is juice? Generally, not always, but generally, once you get above -150, -155, especially -160 or above, those are almost universally the trap lines. And the reason why is because they're set at a way where if you look at trends, if you look at past history, it will be like, oh my God, I can't miss. And it doesn't make a difference if it's juiced at -170 because I'm going to win anyway. You don't pay juice when you win, right? Well, there's a reason why it's set at that. We have a rule in VIP, and people who are in VIP know this very well. Is that -140 is the max line that we ever play for a strikeout prop, straight up. What we'll sometimes do is, if there's some that I think that there's value on a couple heavy juice ones, what we'll sometimes, not always, what we'll do is we'll combine 2, say -165s, -160s, and do a half unit, not a full unit, a half unit parlay that's at plus money, but it's only a 2 strikeout prop parlay, and it's very rare in unique situations. I will tell you is that if you stick to -1, I would, if unless you dig as deep as I do, if I would stick to -135. -135, maybe -140 for some. If you don't go higher than that, then you don't put unnecessary money at risk, because when you're talking about a -160 prop, right? We talk about a -160 or even like a -170. What you have to think about is, what is your break even percentage? And so, meaning like, what percentage of the time do you have to win for that to be profitable? So if you're betting at -160, right? If you're betting at -160, so the percentage of the time that you have to win just to break even is 61.5%, almost, or actually it's actually closer to 63%. So if you're going to do that, what you have to ask yourself is, am I winning at 63% plus? You saw my record. I've made 152 units over 3.5 seasons, and I win at 56%. My average line is -117, and my ROI is plus 12.4%. That's why betting those high juice ones is generally not a good strategy, because your break-even percentage is so high that, and again, I go back to, do the books set lines thinking, oh, well, this is a shitty line and we know it's not going to hit, but we'll offer it to people anyway. No. And the other part with that is, and I firmly believe this, and then I'll move on, is that if you see somebody on X, if you have anybody that's like, well, we have to bet this because the book's screwed up and the line is wrong. No, they don't mess up, guys. They don't make mistakes. And if they do, it's so rare that the one time you're right, you'll be wrong 100 more, and it'll cost you money. The books don't make mistakes. They're algorithms. their science behind it, their data. I mean, I've actually talked with people that work at books and some of the data science that they use, and it blows me away. Okay. So the lines aren't wrong. The lines are set for a reason. And when you start to break down what that reason is, that's when you can find value, potentially even in the other side, right? So, again, example of guy hasn't hit this in 5 of his last 6, but we have over or but we have an under 4.5, which he hasn't hit in his 5 of his last 6 at minus 165. Well, I got to jump on that. Okay. And then he strikes out, for the first 6 batters, and then you're like, oh, damn it, and go on to the next one. It happens over and over again. So I'm not trying to be repetitive. I'm just telling you, please don't fall into that trap. All right. So next is I talked about some of the free sites that we can use, right? Talked about some of the free sites that we can use for finding pitching stats and analysis. And these are ones that I'll use. And this is no secret. This is not something that like I said, my deep dive mathematical algorithms that I use are really the only thing that I keep as my secret sauce. Everything else is public data anyway. So Savant is the first one. This site is just a gem. MLB does it right, man. This is one of my favorite sites to use over and over and over again. Savant has individual player metrics, individual for pitchers and for hitters, swing percentages, zone percentages, all the stuff that I just showed you. 85 to 90% of it comes from Savant. Now you have to dig a little bit and you have to go different pages, and some of it's several clicks in, but Savant is the best. And really, if you want to find a player's profile, if you're new to this, all you really have to do is just type in pitcher name and go to Savant. So basically in Google, just type in, like let's say you wanted to do Garrett Crochet. You type in Garrett Crochet MLB Savant and it would bring up his page. And you bring up his page and it's got all of the metrics that I just showed you. They're all on there. There's spray charts. If you're newer to this, I would advise just taking 1 or 2 pitchers, even take one from your favorite team and just go play around. Just go play around, because it also compares it to MLB average. It compares it to past seasons. There's stuff like break on their curveball, vertical drop on their slider. It's just so much information. So before you just jump in, my advice would be pick 1 pitcher or maybe 2 and just go to their Savant page and just browse and start to become familiar with where you find stuff, because that's the biggest thing that I see people like take so much time. They take like hours upon hours just trying to find every little tidbit of information. It's because you don't browse it beforehand. So just take a look, see what's out there, see what's in there. See, some of the metrics that you're finding are really, really helpful. Just kind of make a mental note of where that is. Bookmark Savant though. Savant is outstanding. Next one is Fangraphs. Fangraphs is where I get a lot of my team swing information. So I talked about how the individual player stuff, but if you want a high level overview and you don't want to dig that far, Fangraphs is a really good one. Now, the one thing I'll say about Fangraphs is it's just riddled with ads. So if you have a bunch of stuff running on your computer, or if you don't have the best internet connection, Fangraphs can really frustrate the shit out of you and want to make you like throw your phone or your device. And I may or may not be speaking from experience. Sometimes it freezes, just so you know. There's a lot of ads. I personally don't find, and if anybody has it and wants to put it in the comments that it's useful, feel free. I don't find that their ad-free VIP stuff is worth the money. I have found everything that I need without it, just using the free stuff. Sometimes you have to spam click through ads, just so you know, and pop-ups and stuff, but it's not something that's going to like wreck your machine. It's just going to slow you down. Fangraphs, I use Fangraphs for team swing metrics a lot. And so if you just go to Fangraphs MLB swing metrics, and it'll bring up the whole thing. You can sort it by month, you can sort it by team, you can sort it by damn near anything you want. You can sort it by the last 3 weeks, the last 2 months, whatever you want to do. it will all be there. There's also a whole bunch of detail. There's some detail that's not on Savant where if you really want to get detailed, it'll show you like each hitter and where they go, like where their swing zones are, where their hot zones are. So so kind of like when you see put on a screen for MLB hot zones, that's a lot of what Fangraphs has. Next two, I talked about umpires. So there's the high level overview and there's the detailed one. So Swish Analytics has a lot more detail. And I know that's a longer link, but if you just do Swish Analytics umpires in a Google search, you can find it. And what that will do is list every MLB umpire, the number of games, every active one, the number of games they've umped, and then it'll show what their strikeout percentage is, what their walk percentage is. And then on the far right, what you'll see is a thing called K boost, BB boost, run boost. And what that is it's a mathematical algorithm that they use to calculate approximately what strikeouts do when that particular umpire is in the box. So for example, I talked about my boy, Bill Miller, right? I talked about Bill Miller, and you go to Swish Analytics and you sort by K boost, and you see that Bill Miller has a K boost factor of 1.24. What this means is in the 546 games that are on record in the site that Bill Miller has umpired, is that strikeouts can increase by up to 24%. Now, I'll warn you with this. I will absolutely warn you, okay, is that the K-boost numbers are not, and I found they're not an exact science, because some people might look at that and say, well, Bill Miller, strikeouts are going to go up by 24%. No, what it's saying is it can go up to by up to 24%. Not that it will, is that it can. That's a tendency thing that you can use to say, oh, okay, Bill Miller is a pitcher-friendly umpire, and he's one of the most pitcher-friendly umpires, wide strike zone, etc. So don't take it as like, oh my God, I need to bet an over every time Bill Miller is behind the plate. I go back to my correlative thing. What correlates nicely, for example, is Bill Miller behind the plate, a team that takes a lot of pitches, and a pitcher that operates around the corners, because then that's where you can steal strikes. That's where you can get guys to swing, so on and so forth. So the next one, if you want to get really detailed on umps, is umpire scorecards. There's a few ads to click through. It's actually just like a bunch of college guys that run it, and they do a really, really nice job. If you have the ability to, there's a way to, they call it buy them a hot dog. It's, like buy me a coffee. It's like $3 to $5. Don't feel obligated to, but if you're able to, and you use the site more than like a few times a week, just throw them some love, because these guys put a lot of work into what they do. Umpire scorecards is a little bit different because it's much more detailed. What they have is detailed ratings of all of the umpires for games called, pitches called, their accuracy, their consistency, and their favoritism. What I mean by favoritism is favoritism towards the home team. And then a stat that they use called leverage. And what leverage means is the impact that the umpires' calls have overall on the outcome of the game. If you want to get super detailed, you can go into each umpire and it'll give you where they missed calls. So where balls were called as strikes and strikes were called as balls. Now it's done in a spray chart, so you can see that an umpire, okay, he misses high and away. I will use that and say, does the pitcher try to hit high and away? And when he does he throw strikes? Stuff like that is what you can start to use to put together a profile for, I remember this umpire. He calls a lot of loose strikes high and away. So I'm looking for a pitcher for an over, for example, of a guy that throws high and away and can hit the corners. I'm not looking for example, like a sinker baller, because a sinker baller obviously is going to go low. I'm also not looking for a guy that's like a sinker slider pitcher, because sliders tend to run low and away. Sinkers tend to run low in the zone and initiate ground balls, blah, blah, blah. So I'm not really looking for that. But that's if you want to get super, 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 super detailed. And then the last one is, oh my gosh, there's a reason, if you're in VIP, you know this, there's a reason why we don't bet most, not all, most K props before lineups are released. And the reason being is exactly what I showed you, right, on the previous page, because you have all of these whiff percentages, okay? But that's for these 9 guys. Now, let's just say, and Dodger fans, you know what I mean. Let's just say Tommy Edman was replaced by Chris Taylor, okay? Chris Taylor's a walking strikeout, and Chris Taylor's swing metrics are just off the charts gaudy bad, right? This 0.25 of a projected strikeout, because of all these metrics, would probably go up to 1, if not 1.5, because of the type of hitter he is. I've seen it over and over and over again where people just jump on a prop and use, like, say, the lineup from the previous day, and all of a sudden there's like all these like scrubs in, and you're like, oh man, of course this guy's out, this guy's out. Why the fuck do you think the line was set the way it was? Okay, the books have an idea, and in general they know. So that's why we wait usually until lineups are confirmed. Now, what RotoWire has, and I found RotoWire to be the best, is they have a projected lineup tool that in general it's accurate. It's a free tool, so it's not going to be like all the inside intel that like, say, books or somebody else might have, but in general it's pretty accurate, and it can give you a general picture. What I like doing is matching that lineup up with some of the metrics I talked about, and then thinking, okay, if I'm going to go over, I need this guy and this guy and this guy. I don't want that guy, right? Similar premise. I just make a few notes, just a few notes about it. It needs to have this guy and this guy and this guy. It can't have this guy, or whatever the situation is. And then once the lineup is confirmed, you can actually go back to RotoWire, because they have projected when it'll be shaded in like red, and then green is when it'll be confirmed. You can also go to MLB.com, but sometimes MLB.com is a little bit slower. The other one that you can use is, if you don't follow Underdog MLB or Underdog Fantasy MLB on Twitter, you should, because they're very, very good at getting the lineups out before anyone. They actually get it out before RotoWire sometimes, but you have to be like, by your phone and ready for the alert. So if there's a game that I'm waiting for, I will turn on alerts from Underdog, because they are almost always the first one. So the official handle, I believe, is Underdog ML. It's on X is, I'm just getting it for you just so you have, at underdog _ MLB. And if you don't follow them, I strongly suggest you do, because they're often first for lineups. So those are some of the free ones that I use. All have different purposes, all have different values. Sometimes I use some more than others. Some days I just do a general check for a few, depending on what I'm looking for. But in general, those are free sites that you use, that anybody from the public can use and have. So, all right, moving on. Couple pitchers that are in new homes and what the potential impact could be for those guys. So, just because a pitcher goes to a new home doesn't necessarily mean that anything can or will change. But what I want to do is just kind of briefly touch on 6 guys who I think the change for them can mean certain things. So the first one is, it's my boy. It's my boy, Big Jack Flaherty, going back to the Tigers after getting signed last year by the Tigers, and then getting traded to the Dodgers midseason, gave himself a ring, and then went back to the Tigers on, I believe, a 3-year deal or 2 or 3 year deal. So the reason why this is important is because Flaherty gets reunited with the same Tigers pitching staff that fixed his mechanics last season. So the whole reason for his breakout and why he got was such a hot trade commodity is because they fixed something in his rotation or in his delivery. Flaherty was pitching very mechanically because he had a whole host of injuries in some of his latter years in St. Louis. And so when he came to the Tigers, he had fully healed from the injuries. But what they noticed was his delivery was still very mechanical. And Jack is a big athletic guy. So, 6'4", 225. And what they noticed was they said, okay, we're going to have you go back to some of your old delivery, because instead of pitching mechanically, we want you just to use your big athletic body to get more break on your breaking balls, to get more consistency on your fastball, so on and so forth. The results were obvious. So Jack goes back. Spring training overall, he's had 3 starts, 14 innings. He's got a 9 Ks per 9 in spring training, and overall has looked pretty decent. In his last 2 starts in spring training, he's already up to 80 pitches. And that's a higher total than he had each of the previous few years in spring training. So he's been working himself up. So I would expect in Flaherty's first few starts, it would not be out of the question for him to go 5+ innings and have 90 pitches. And at this point in the season, especially opening day, first couple starts, when there's a higher chance for guys to get babied, that can matter. So Jack's one I'm looking at for some overs. There's a few spots that I think he might start at early in the season that I am definitely going to look for, but I'm a huge fan of Jack Flaherty, man. I am a huge fan of his comeback story. He's also, just at a personal level, he does a lot of social activism. He's very involved in stuff like Black Lives Matter. He's very involved in just a whole bunch of socially conscious things. So just a solid dude that I always personally root for. So next, Corbin Burnes. Arizona is quietly building one of the best overall rotations in Major League Baseball. They signed Corbin Burnes this offseason, and he's going to be a really, really nice complement with his just wicked curveball to the fastball and that Gallen has, and some of their other guys in the rotation. Burnes so far four spring training starts, he's got almost a 10K per 9 average, which is not super normal for him. Burnes' strikeout percentage has only been in the low 20s over the last few years. He does get a lot of guys in the field. His last spring training start was kind of a unmitigated disaster. 11 hits, 7 earned in 2 2/3 innings. So, I don't put a whole lot of stock in one bad spring training start. The reason being is prior to that, he had an ERA of 1.35 and was just rocking and rolling. He did get up to 75 pitches again. And I think that start was they were just going to stretch him for 75 pitches and then get him off the stage, because he is going to be going early. He's probably going to be going deep. He's another guy that I'm looking at for maybe not even potential overs on strikeouts, but for sure potential over on outs or over on innings, as you will. So he's a guy, he's a guy so his debut might not come until the first road trip of the year. So he's not going to be the opening day starter. The reason why, because people are thinking, oh my God, did he get bumped down in the rotation? No, it was to maintain his overall routine. Right. So it's to maintain his overall routine and what his progression leading into the season is. So don't think anything into that. Burnes is going to be a regular guy in this rotation. Based on how he's pitching in spring training, I can see his strikeouts going up a little bit, because back when they were in Baltimore, his overall strikeout percentage was one of the lower of his career. Burnes is a pitcher that operates in the zone only 46.6% of the time. I talked about some of these metrics, and he does try to get guys to chase. Last year, he did try to work his cutter in a little bit more with not as much success. So I'm interested to see what kind of pitch mix he throws early in the season. Next is Max Fried. Max Fried signed the large monster deal with the New York Yankees, largest deal ever for a left-handed starter in Major League history. With the injury to Corbin Burns, with the injury to Garrett Cole, and some of their injuries on the Yankees staff, Fried's going to have to step in right away. Originally, I wasn't necessarily convinced that Fried would be stretched out early. I was not 100% convinced that he would be stretched out early. Reason is his history of injuries. Fried has missed games over each of the last few seasons with a variety of ailments. And when you sign a guy to this big of a contract, even if you're the Yankees, you want to make sure that you're getting your money's worth. So I wasn't 100% sure. However, with some of the injuries to the Yankees rotation, there might be worlds where he does go a little bit deeper. Overall, in spring training, Fried went 78 pitches in his last spring training start. He's looked good, not striking guys out very much, though. So Fried is a guy where he gets strikeouts when he needs to, but he's not really a strikeout pitcher. He's a guy, especially when you have some of the thinness in the rotation that the Yankees are going to have to start the year. I can see him potentially going 80-ish, 85 pitches, and but getting a lot of guys in the field. That's been what he's been doing for each of the last few seasons. He's been a guy who the strikeouts are there if he needs them, but he does operate in the zone above league average. He does generate a lot of zone contact, but he also generates a lot of ground ball outs and a lot of outs in the field. So his curveball, which is his specialty, if you've never seen it before, when it's working, it's just absolutely wicked. His overall break on his curveball has been kind of up and down over the last few seasons. Part of that is due to injury. So what I'm actually looking for Max Fried to start the season is I'm looking for maybe some longer starts, but also not a ton of strikeouts. So a lot of quick outs in the field. So depending on the opponent and the situation, I might be on some Max Fried unders. Next one, Garrett Crochet, big lefty. He was obviously going to leave the White Sox. He was obviously gonna get a bag, and he did just that. Crochet goes to the White Sox, where he will be one of the main guys in his rotation. And I mean, you guys know Crochet's story by now. 97-mile-an-hour fastball. He's got a cutter that's 92, a sweeper that has a 42.2% whiff percentage. I mean, this kid's got all the stuff, right? This kid's got all the stuff. Now, the one thing I will say about Garrett Crochet is that I do hope that he diversifies his pitches a little bit more this year. He got roughed up a few times at the end of last season, partially because he does throw his fastball and his cutter, which coming off look very, very similarly. And guys are starting to figure that out a little bit because he throws those two almost 80%, actually almost 90% of the time. The sweeper and the changeup are his main put away pitches. I would like to see him rely a little bit more on those this year. So I'm kind of adopting a wait and see attitude with Crochet whenever a guy goes to a new team, absent of any other situations, like I talked about Burns and Fried and Flaherty, which went back to the same team he was at last year. But whenever a guy goes to a new team, completely new situation, and everything is just kind of like normalized, I want to see how they use him and how they call this game. Now, if you go by spring training, he's looking phenomenal. A .73 ERA, almost 18 Ks per 9 innings, or almost 18 Ks per 9, or actually no, not 18. I'm sorry. Almost 18 Ks. Yeah, I didn't believe it at first. Almost 18 Ks per 9 innings, which is just absurd. That's going to go down in the regular season, obviously. At least I think it will. But Crochet has only allowed one earned run throughout all of spring training. He's looking phenomenal. So what at least initially I have seen is that he's using his other pitches more. If he's going to do that, I think I might just wait for his first start just to make sure that it translates to the regular season against full-time big league hitting. This might be a guy that I want to go early and often on, because when he's on, he can rival Paul Skeens for the strikeout lead. Not necessarily to say that, like, I don't try to put in like who's one's better than the other, but Garrett Crochet has the stuff to lead Major League Baseball in strikeouts this year. Next is one you might not think of. Yusei Kikuchi, kind of the old man now, the old veteran, goes out to LA. And he's a guy who I think could have some sneaky value on. People tend to forget about Kikuchi because he's kind of been around for a while, and he obviously was traded to the Astros last year, had a kind of a mixed bag of results, but this is a guy who can still get strikeouts when he needs to. He's still got a fastball that hits 95, 96 on the gun. He's got a really nice curveball, and he does have really, really good stuff. In spring training, decent numbers, right? Decent numbers, a 1.93 ERA, and he's averaging just over 11 Ks per nine, which would be higher than he had each of the last few seasons. With Kikuchi, Kikuchi is a guy that does operate in the zone. He is about 3% above league average, but he makes guys miss in the zone. And the way that he does that is by his location. So he's got his four-seam fastball goes at the 10 and 11 if you're looking at a clock. His slider goes from noon to 3, and then his curveball drops from 4 to 6. So he kind of does like all the way around the dial and tries to clip the corners in the zone. What I look for with Kikuchi is I look for a team that takes a good number of pitches, and I look for a team that doesn't make a ton of zone contact. You give me those two things, and he's enough of a veteran where even with a new team, even with a new pitching staff, what I've seen so far in spring training, I'm obviously not projecting the Angels to win like a ton of games this year or make any reasonable playoff push, but I think that Kikuchi can scratch out a pretty decent year, even though he's been around for a while. He's 33 years old. He's still got some decent stuff. So don't sleep on Kikuchi. Now, of course, the fact that I said that and the fact that he plays for the Angels, God forbid, we know what happens to guys that sign big contracts and go to the Angels. So hope to God that doesn't happen to him. And last but not least, one of my favorite guys that I've seen in spring training. Oh man, has this guy looked good. Jesus Luzardo. He's had good stuff. He hasn't put up the best numbers, but it's because he's with a new pitching coach, a new staff, because he went to Philly from Miami, and they're working on him getting more control and getting more consistency. I think that he could be very undervalued to start the year. Luzardo operates under league average in the zone. His first pitch strike percentage just kind of goes, it's kind of like this. He has had some trouble with walks. He hasn't gotten guys to chase a whole bunch, but when he does, they only make contact at 48.2% last year, 47 for his career, which is way under MLB average of about 57.8%. Luzardo, pretty traditional pitcher, four-seamer, curve, changeup, slider, but he has had some periods of time in spring training where even though he's given up some runs, he has just looked absolutely fantastic. So I think that Luzardo is a guy that can really, really provide some value, especially early in the season. So remember what he did in his last game in spring training was he got pulled 3.5 innings into his start, but then he retook the mound and retired the side in order, pitched a great inning, looked great. The Phillies are actually pretty high on this guy. So I think maybe I'm not ready to fire on him right away in the season, but early in the year, I think that we can get some lines that might be a little bit undervalued with Mr. Luzardo. All right, onward. So potential value pitchers early in the season, meaning guys that you haven't heard of. There's 5 of them. So Kumar Rocker is one. I'm always been a big fan of this kid's stuff. He's had some control issues. So he's walked 6 guys in spring training. He had some problems with walks last year. But when you look at his overall stuff, he's got a dynamite fastball. He's a number 2 prospect for the Rangers. He's actually a top 25 prospect in all of Major League Baseball. His fastball average is 96. He can get it up to closer to 99. And he's got an 85 or 84 mile an hour slider that runs low and away that is just absolutely wicked. So, a guy that I'm looking at to see how they use him. I also want to see because last year, even when he started, there were a number of games he only started 3 games last year and never went more than 75 pitches. So I'm trying to see in what fashion they're going to use him, because he actually threw more pitches in his last spring training start against the Rockies than he did all of last season. So if they're going to give him 90 pitches or so, it might be a bumpy ride. It might not be the Blake Snell experience, but it might be a bumpier ride. But Rocker is a guy who can rack up strikeouts very, very fast, especially against teams that haven't seen him before. And so, because it's one thing to watch on film and get a scouting report, it's quite another thing to see him at the plate. Next one, Christopher Sanchez. Christopher Sanchez, this is one thing that I look at all the time is what did guys do from last year? And what Christopher Sanchez did last year or coming into this year is that he added a new pitch. So he has worked on a few new pitches. He's worked on a change in his delivery, a change in his motion. And this is a guy who he's someone who can be, I know Sharpie loves to bet on him for his innings, for his outs over, because he's Mr. Ground Ball. Now, when you add a new strikeout pitch, what you can do is you can go back and forth between the two and maybe not get as many ground ball outs, but maybe raise your strikeouts. It's already happening this year in spring training, 10.4 Ks per 9, which is higher than last year. He's got a 1.84 ERA, hasn't thrown a ton of pitches. So in his last 2 spring training starts, only 60 and 61 pitches. I wouldn't expect the Phillies to stretch him out to like 85, 90 right away. What I would expect is that after the first few starts, especially as he gets kind of used to some of the changes that he made from last year, is that then that's where he might have some value. So just a guy that you definitely want to keep an eye on. And the other thing that he did last year, which hasn't been as prevalent in spring training, is he ramped up his sinker usage. So if you don't know, sinker ball pitchers tend to not get a whole lot of strikeouts because a sinker is designed to kind of cut down in the zone like that, and then hitters hit on top of the ball and hit ground balls. That's why when you see a lot of the guys that lead MLB in ground ball outs, a lot of them are sinker ball pitchers, or a lot of them throw balls that break low in the zone. The reason why is that you want hitters to hit on top of the ball. When you hit on top of the ball, obviously that creates that creates a ground ball. So Hayden Birdsong is a guy who has really, really good MLB stuff. He kind of had a wild ride last year. He had some problems with walks last year, had some problems with control. This year, overall, he has spotty spring training appearances, but he's looked really good. He hasn't allowed a single earned run. He's only allowed 2 hits and in 12 innings, and he does have a 9 Ks per 9. So from a strikeout perspective, he's, especially when he's only throwing 60 pitches, what I'm hoping is that as the Giants start to stretch him, is that they decide to stretch him before lines adjust, and maybe we can get a solid 3.5 or or a plus money 4.5 on him against the right opponent, and we can get some value there. The other thing that I might be looking at for Hayden Birdsong is some of his earned runs and walks under, because there were a few problems with those last year. He has not walked a guy yet in spring training. Last year, I mean, the walks were just outrageous. I mean, he had virtually every start was 2+ walks. He had 4+ walks in, I think, like 7 or 8 of them. So just put way too many guys on base and racked up his pitch count. Looks a lot better this year, a lot sharper, a lot more control in spring training, as I mentioned, with absolutely no walks. So he's a guy that I'm probably looking at a little bit for strikeouts, but I'm looking a lot more at for outs recorded, for overs, because he can go deeper if you don't walk guys, and potentially earn runs and walks for sure under. Next guy is Brandon Pfaadt. This guy isn't really necessarily like a breakout candidate, because you know who he is because you saw him pitch in the World Series, but Pfaadt has big league stuff. He really has big league stuff. And for all the talk about Gallen and about Corbin Burns, Pfaadt has a really, really good mix of stuff. I've really liked watching him. He's had some control problems with his fastball, but over the years. But this year, overall, in spring training, some decent numbers, about 9 Ks per 9. 5.54 ERA in 4 games pitched, 3 starts. It's kind of been a little bit of a bumpy road, but if he's going to stay in this Diamondbacks rotation because of all the arms that they have, if he's going to stay in the starting lineup, he's really, really going to have to rein in and get control of that fastball. So what I'm looking for him, especially when where he's going to be in the rotation, I'm also looking at is he could be a guy that they're going to use in, like, say, spot starts or starts against a team on, say, a traveling day. And what that gets you is sometimes you don't get their best lineup. You get a bunch of guys out. You get guys that are just utility guys in for a day. And with Pfaadt's fastball, he's a guy who can be if he's a spot starter for the Diamondbacks, he can be a spot usage guy for you as a K prop. Last but not least, Spencer Schwellenbach. I like this guy's stuff too. And you know, Schwellenbach kind of came on last year. He kind of came on the scene last year. He's got really, really good stuff. He's got a fastball that hits at 96. He's got a slider that's got almost a 30% whiff rate and a nice break. But he also has a really, really nice curveball that he uses for lefties. It's got a 41% whiff rate. So Schwellenbach had some really, really good starts last year, especially before teams kind of caught on to him and caught on to his pitch mix. He's also diversified his pitch mix in spring training so far, and has put up some really, really solid results. 3.32 ERA, almost 13 Ks per 9, and he has only walked 3 guys across 21 innings. So he's really, really cleaned up some of his, he's a young guy, so he's cleaned up some of the rookie mechanic stuff from last year. Schwellenbach's a guy that I'm actively looking at, especially since he'll probably be closer to the back end of the rotation to face. It's kind of like Pfaadt, where maybe, you know, he's facing guys on a moving day, or he's facing guys that second and third game of a series, depending on how the rotation works out. But he's a guy where I think we can get some value on as well. All right. So with that in mind, I will finish with I talked about it before, and again, I'm not shitting on trend bettors, but to close out here, so how to bet K props. Okay. How to bet K props. There's no real, like, tried and true way for how to bet K props. I talked about trends before, and trends can be helpful for you. What I use trends for is the opposite of what most people do. Most people use trends as something to say, hit in this, not that, so therefore I should bet it. I use trends to compare to the line itself. And what I mean by that is, I mentioned it earlier. If a guy has hit 7 out of his last 8, 5+ strikeouts, and all of a sudden now he's down to a 3.5, right? The 3.5 and the over 3.5 is juiced heavily. Virtually every single one of those spots, guys, I'm serious, is a trap. It's almost always a trap line. Not that it can't hit, but it's almost always a trap line. The books, when it comes to props, love when casual players take the can't miss lines at heavy, heavy juice. And do you know what the money that they collect from that does? Well, it pays off people like me and people who are in our VIP and like winning. I know I saw a whole bunch of winning people in the comments, like Adams and like Prop God. See all in the comments. It pays people like us, and then they take a little bit extra, AKA the juice, for themselves. So I'm not saying don't use trends. I'm not saying like just totally disregard them. What I'm saying is, if the trend and the line and the situation don't make sense, there's always a reason for it. And I will just stand on this hill forever and no one can talk me off of it. The books don't make mistakes when they set lines. They don't. You should always assume that the book line is correct for a reason, and the reason why is what you have to figure out to get value on the line. So maybe it's a trap line. Maybe you don't want to go to the other side. Maybe you want to just leave it alone. Maybe you want to just let it go, right? Maybe you want to wait for lineups to come out. What I'm saying is, all this stuff that I've given you, and maybe you want to watch it back again, are tools that you can use to make an educated, informed decision for yourself. And if you're going to bet K props on your own and just follow my free play, the one free play that I give it that I'm going to be giving a day, then totally fine. But I'm trying to help you save yourself money and not give up any unnecessary money to the books via heavy juice. The other way that you can do is hit me up DM. And if you want to just have all this work, by the way, for K props, I show all my work. I show one of those graphs for every play that we do, always reasoning, always analysis behind it. So hit me up via DM, because would love to get you in, would love to help you, would love to have you in our VIP. So that will do it for us today. I know went on a little bit longer, but I think that covered everything that I wanted to cover. So we'll be back throughout the MLB season with plays, with analysis, with information. Hopefully y'all learned something today. Hopefully you had, it was an informative thing. That was kind of my thought, was not necessarily to just like spam out plays today, because the other thing that I do is I take it very, very lightly early in the season for MLB. And the reason why I do that is because we haven't established baselines for this year. And that's another reason why we don't use, I personally don't use stats from last year very, very much, because I find that they have value if the guy has like the same situation. So if he's going to have the same catcher, he's going to have the same pitching coach, if he's going to be a part of the same team. But you get a guy like that went to a whole new team and like a whole new situation, a whole new everything. And what good does last year's stats do you? It doesn't do you a whole lot of good, because that's not the spot that he's in this year. And that's why we go light to start the MLB season, because once we establish a baseline, that will tell us what's going to happen this year, this game, this situation. So back later this week with more for baseball, more for strikeout props, more for the NCAA tournament. We got the Sweet 16 coming up. So please make sure, give me a follow at SpinDoc Sports, at Sosa Picks, Win the Day VIP. DM me if you're interested in all the best information for strikeout props. I will already showed you the record right? Already showed you the record. The numbers don't lie. There is a science behind this, and there is a very, very discernible difference between winning players and losing players. And I don't say that out of arrogance. I just say that because it happens to be fact, and because I've learned through my own hard lessons about what works and what doesn't, and I love to help you. So thanks for tuning in, guys. Have a great day. Best of luck in all your action today. We'll see you later.